Welcome, brave soul. I am the forgotten storyteller. Before we begin, tap that like button if you dare, and drop a comment below telling me where in the world you're listening from. And if you make it to the end of this video, I hope to see you in the next story. I hope you're ready, because I am. Let's begin. Do you believe a child's toy can remember? Not in the way we remember birthdays or old photographs. I mean something darker. Memory etched into porcelain. Secrets sealed in glass eyes. A hunger that does not fade even when decades pass. They say dolls were made to comfort children, but some were made to keep them forever. Our story today begins in a quiet town many years ago. A storm is coming, and an 8-year-old girl named Mary Holloway is about to whisper her last words to the darkness. The Holloway home was a tall, weathered Victorian, its roof a crown of black shingles dripping with rain. The year was 1923, and thunder rolled low like a warning bell. Upstairs, in the cramped attic, little Mary sat alone beneath the slanted beams. Her dress was white, though the fabric had dulled with dust. Her eyes, wide, glassy, unblinking, were fixed on the doll she held. The doll was no ordinary toy. Handmade porcelain. Skin pale as bone. Cheeks painted faintly pink, lips pursed in a frozen smirk. Its eyes, a chilling shade of glassy blue, seemed too alive. Its hair, once bright red, had faded to the brittle color of rust. Mary whispered to it, her voice trembling but steady. "You said you'd keep me safe? You said you'd be my friend." The doll's head tilted just slightly. Or perhaps it was only the flicker of candlelight. Outside, the storm raged. Windows rattled. Lightning split the sky, and for a moment the attic filled with harsh white light. When darkness returned, Mary's face twisted, not in playfulness, not in fear, but in horror so pure it froze her small body in place. Hours later, when the Holloways finally forced the attic door open, they found her, lying cold, motionless. No wounds, no blood, but her mouth stretched wide in silent terror. The doll sat nestled in her arms. Her parents screamed, pleaded, begged for answers. The doctor called it a sudden seizure. The priest muttered about restless spirits. But neighbors whispered of something else. They said Mary's grandmother, a reclusive woman who rarely left her cottage at the edge of town, had made the doll. That she dabbled in charms and folk rites too old and too dangerous for God's light. That she tried to preserve Mary when illness nearly took her months before. Tried to bind her spirit into clay and glass so she would never leave. But if that were true, something had gone terribly, terribly wrong. The Holloway family sealed the attic. The house was abandoned. And the doll, along with Mary's belongings, was donated to a distant orphanage. And thus began the wandering. The decades-long trail of quiet ruin left behind by a child's toy that should have never been born. Families who adopted it complained of nightmares, dreams of a pale little girl pressing her hands against their windows, begging to be let inside. Toys shifted on shelves in the night. Children vanished, though some were found again, standing in basements or fields, confused, muttering, "She wanted me to play." Every owner encountered something strange. Some had falls and other weird accidents. Some ended their own lives. Some came down with illness. The doll was always given away, abandoned, sold. But it never disappeared. It only waited. And eventually, it was found again. Nearly a century later, the Whitewood Historical Museum prepared for its most ambitious exhibit. Toys of the Forgotten, childhood relics from the past. Dr. Evelyn Carter, a woman of precision and poise, was the museum's lead curator. Her love for antiques bordered on obsession, though she cloaked it in scholarly professionalism. When the doll appeared at an estate auction, lot number 47, she felt an immediate pull. The room was filled with chatter, but when the velvet cloth was pulled away to reveal the porcelain figure, a hush spread like a contagion. Those blue glass eyes reflected the auction hall's chandeliers in cold little pinpricks of light. Evelyn raised her paddle. Others hesitated. Few bid. Fewer wanted to take it home. When the gavel struck, the doll was hers. Back at the museum, she carefully set it inside a glass display case, labeling it Anonymous, circa 1920. Porcelain doll. Condition, preserved. No mention of Mary Holloway. No whisper of curses. Just another artifact stripped of story. Or so she thought. Opening night of the exhibit drew a modest crowd. Families, students, the curious. One guest, a young photographer named Lena Park, leaned in close to snap a photo of the doll. Her flash reflected in the blue eyes, and for a second she swore the face twitched, its lips pulling ever so slightly wider. That night, rain slicked the roads. Driving home, Lena caught a glimpse in her rearview mirror. a child. Her skin was very pale. In a white nightgown, sitting silently in the back seat. Her scream echoed as her car swerved, tires shrieking against wet asphalt. The crash crumpled metal into wood. Glass shattered like ice. She survived. Bruised, bleeding, gasping. When the paramedics asked what happened, she whispered, "There was a girl. She was smiling. She was sitting right behind me." But there was no one there. Only her camera lying cracked in the grass. Inside it, the photo of the doll. And in that photo, faint but visible, was the blurred outline of a child standing just behind the glass. The story should have ended there. But it did not. The doll was awake again. And it was waiting for more. The museum thrived on the legend. Visitors swarmed to see the strange little doll, daring one another to take selfies with it. Social media carried its image further than Mary Holloway could have ever dreamed. And with each photograph, with each gaze into those porcelain eyes, something stirred. One man, a skeptic who mocked the exhibit, woke one morning to find deep scratches carved into his arms, as though fingernails had raked him in his sleep. His security cameras recorded nothing, but at 3:30 a.m. the bedroom grew cold, the curtains stirred, and the faintest sound of giggling echoed through the stillness. A mother who had taken her infant to the museum awoke every night at the same hour to her baby's piercing cries. The child's gaze always fixed on a framed photograph on the wall, the doll smiling faintly just watching. And then there was the teenager, live streaming from the exhibit, laughing at the cursed rumors. His voice cut off mid-sentence. The stream froze, showing only his pale face, eyes wide in terror. When his parents found him, he sat in silence, lips moving faintly, whispering one phrase again and again. "Mary wants to play." The internet erupted. Blogs, forums, conspiracy threats. Some just mocked. Some believed. One blogger, determined to debunk the legend, mocked the doll openly, posted a photo of himself kissing its glass case. 2 nights later, his home exploded in fire. His last uploaded photo remained online. The doll behind the glass, and in its reflection, a small, pale figure with hands pressed against the case. Dr. Carter noticed. She could not ignore it anymore. The accidents were too frequent, the whispers too loud. She dug through archives, unearthing yellowed newspaper clippings, old death notices. And there it was. Mary Holloway, 8 years old. Died during a storm in 1923. Face frozen in terror. Doll pressed against her chest. The doll's story had been erased, smothered by time. But the truth was written in silence, waiting for someone curious enough, or foolish enough, to uncover it. And Evelyn Carter had already gone too far. The museum grew quieter after the string of accidents. Visitors came still, drawn by the whispers, but they came with nervous laughter, voices hushed, glancing over their shoulders as though the walls themselves were listening. Security guards muttered of cold spots in the west wing, the sensation of tiny fingers brushing their hands when no one was there. The doll, of course, never moved, always seated upright, lips pursed in its faint smirk. But cameras told another story. In every photograph taken, no matter the angle, no matter the lighting, there was always something in the background. At first, it was only a blur, a smudge of light. Then it grew into the faint outline of a small figure. A child. Pale skin. Long hair. Always standing just behind whoever dared to look too closely. Dr. Evelyn Carter studied the photos night after night, her office filled with their prints. She lined them across her desk, her walls, the floor. Each one showing the same truth. The more the doll was photographed, the clearer the child became. And then, one night, she saw it. In the latest photo, the blur was no longer a blur. It was a face. A child's face. Lips bloodless, eyes wide, staring directly into the lens. And just beneath that face, written faintly across the reflection in the glass, "Let me out." It began with whispers. Soft and faint. Like a draft through a cracked window. Evelyn awoke in the dark of her apartment one night to the sound of footsteps. Not heavy, adult steps, but the soft patter of bare feet moving across the wooden floor. She sat up in bed. The digital clock read 3:17 a.m., the exact time Mary Holloway had died a century before. At the foot of her bed stood a small figure. A girl no taller than 8. Her nightgown was stained, her face pale, her hair hanging damp as though she'd just come in from the storm. "You shouldn't have brought me here," the girl whispered. And then she was gone. The room empty, the air still. But Evelyn did not sleep again. The days blurred. At the museum, she felt the doll's eyes tracking her. Not in imagination. Not in paranoia. She tested it. She would step left. Its gaze followed. She would step right. Its gaze followed. Visitors complained of dizziness, of feeling watched. One child tugged at his mother's sleeve and asked, "Why is the girl inside the glass crying?" But the doll never changed. Its porcelain face remained as it had always been. Evelyn brought a recorder to the museum, placing it inside the case overnight. When she played the tape back the next morning, her blood froze. At first, silence. Then static. Then, faint giggling. A child's voice humming a lullaby long out of tune. And finally, clear as day, words whispered just inches from the microphone. "Play with me, Dr. Carter." She smashed the recorder to pieces. But the voice did not leave her. Evelyn's research took her back to Mary Holloway's town. The Holloway home was still there, a rotting skeleton of wood and dust, long abandoned. Neighbors avoided it. Curtains twitched when she passed. Through persistence, she found a retired nurse. Old, frail, half-blind, but her memory sharp as broken glass. Mary, the nurse confessed, had not died from illness. Her parents had fought. Her mother, furious, locked her in the attic to teach her a lesson. Hours passed. A storm raged. By the time they remembered, the child was gone. But when they found her, she was not alone. The doll was clutched in her arms. And the nurse swore with trembling lips, that when she bent to lift the child's body, the doll's mouth was wet, stained with blood. Her soul was taken, the nurse whispered, weeping, sealed in that evil doll. And it wants out. Evelyn left in silence. But the doll followed her home. Her apartment became unlivable. Clocks froze at 3:17 every night. Toys she had boxed and stored for research shifted positions, sometimes arranged in a perfect circle on the floor. Her mirrors fogged over with the words, "Play with me." She set up cameras. On playback, she watched herself sleeping, until, at the hour of 3:17, the blanket was pulled from her body by unseen hands. A pale figure stood at her bedside, watching, lips moving soundlessly. When she enhanced the footage, she saw what it whispered. "You belong to me now." Her strength waned. Her reflection grew pale. Dark circles hollowed her eyes. And always, in the corners of her vision, she saw the child. Always smiling. Always waiting. Desperation drove her to destruction. First, she tried fire. She set the doll ablaze in a furnace chamber. Flames licked porcelain, devoured fabric. But when the smoke cleared, the doll was whole, untouched. Next, she tried to shatter it. She smashed it with hammers, dropped it from heights, drove nails into its eyes. The porcelain cracked. But by the time she blinked, by the time her gaze wavered, it was whole again. She buried it in the earth, deep beneath consecrated ground, surrounded by salt and protective symbols. Days later, she returned to the museum and found it waiting in its glass case, pristine and smiling. The doll could not be destroyed. It could not be banished. It wanted something else. In her research, Evelyn discovered a pattern. Victims were not bound by the doll itself, but by images of it. Photographs, paintings, reflections. Each picture was a thread, a tether binding Mary's tormented spirit to new prey. The camera lens was not a shield, it was a door. And every time someone looked, Mary stepped closer. It was no accident the curse flourished in the digital age. The internet was her playground. Every repost, every share, every like spread her reach farther than ever before. Mary Holloway, dead in 1923, had found a way to live again. Through glass, through screens, through the endless hunger of a world that could not look away. And now, Evelyn was the center of it, the curator of Mary's return. One night, Evelyn sat at her computer, staring at the thousands of images that filled her screen. The doll's face multiplied endlessly, across articles, blog posts, social feeds. And in every single one, the child grew clearer. Some images showed her just behind the doll. Others showed her standing closer, reaching out. And in the most recent, she was no longer behind. She was beside the photographer. Her small hand pressed gently against their shoulder. And then Evelyn saw the newest photo, timestamped just hours before. It was of her, taken without her knowledge, in the museum, standing near the doll. And behind her, Mary was smiling. Dr. Evelyn Carter could feel her sanity slipping, like glass cracking beneath too much weight. Sleep brought no rest, only whispers. Waking hours bled with shadows of a child lurking in corners, darting behind door frames. The museum staff began to avoid her. They whispered about her pallor, about the tremor in her hands, about the way she sometimes seemed to speak to the empty glass case as though something were listening. And perhaps it was. Because late one night, while she lingered in the gallery after closing, the doll's head turned. Not a trick of light. Not imagination. The porcelain head pivoted slowly, its blue eyes fixing directly on her. And from the glass came the faintest tap tap tap, like fingernails scratching from the inside. The child came to her fully now. No longer wisps in the dark, no longer shadows caught in mirrors. A girl of 8. White gown. Damp hair. Face pale and sunken. "You shouldn't have brought me here," Mary whispered again, her voice layered, childlike, yet hollow as though echoing from a well. "What do you want?" Evelyn choked out. The girl smiled, exposing small, blood-darkened teeth. "I want to play." Then her mouth split wider, impossibly wide, the porcelain sound of cracking bone echoing in the room, until the child's face collapsed into a scream that rattled glass, shook the walls, extinguished the lights. When the museum guards found Evelyn the next morning, she was curled on the floor, muttering, "She's not in the doll anymore. She's everywhere." Evelyn knew the curse could not be broken by fire or force. Mary did not live in porcelain alone, she lived in images, reflections, copies. And so Evelyn hatched one desperate plan. She would erase her. She locked herself in her apartment, every curtain drawn, every light extinguished except the glow of her computer. One by one she hunted down the images, deleting files, pulling down posts, contacting admins to remove the doll's photos from archives. But the harder she tried, the more they multiplied. Her screen flickered. Images flooded in faster than she could delete them. Thousands, tens of thousands, each one showing the doll from a new angle. And in every one Mary grew clearer. In some, she pressed her face against the glass, fogging it with her breath. In others, she leaned toward the camera, her hand stretching outward. And then Evelyn froze. Because on her screen appeared photos she had never seen before. Not museum selfies, not historical records, but images of the victims. Lena Park in her shattered car. The blogger's house aflame. The teenager, mouth agape, whispering. And in each one Mary was there, standing closer, always closer, until the final image filled the screen. It was Evelyn herself, at her desk, taken from behind. Mary stood over her shoulder, hand resting gently on her back. The screen glitched. Text scrawled across the image in jagged letters. "Now you're part of the collection." The computer shut itself off. The room fell silent. And Dr. Evelyn Carter was never seen again. The Whitewood Historical Museum closed the exhibit within weeks. Officially, it was due to staffing shortages and structural renovations. Unofficially, the guards refused to patrol the West Wing, and whispers of flickering lights and childlike laughter spread through the city. The doll was locked away, sealed in the museum's storage wing. No one spoke of it. Months passed. Dust gathered. Silence lingered. Until one night, a tourist group on an urban legends tour slipped inside the abandoned museum. Their flashlights cut through webs and shadows. Their laughter carried, nervous but bold, through the halls. They found the storage wing. Rows of shelves stacked with forgotten relics. And on the highest shelf, seated upright, was the doll. Its porcelain face gleamed pale in the light. Its red curls looked brighter, fresher. Its dress, once tattered, was clean. Against every warning, against every whispered legend, one of them raised their phone. "Smile, Mary," he said, mocking. The screen flickered as the camera snapped. He looked down at the photo. The doll's eyes were wide open, wider than they had been. And behind it, faint but visible, a hand, small, pale, rested on his shoulder. Text scrawled across the screen, though no app had placed it there. "Now you're part of the collection." His friends laughed, until the lights went out. And in the pitch darkness, a child's voice echoed, giggling, whispering, "Play with me. Do you remember what I asked at the start? Whether a toy can remember. Now you know. Porcelain does not forget. Glass does not forgive. And Mary Holloway will never stop playing." Perhaps you think you're safe, that you're only listening, that you haven't looked at her face. But tell me, are you sure? Because sometimes, even hearing her story is enough. Listen closely. Do you hear that? The sound. Like little footsteps. Behind you. Don't turn around, you don't want to make eye contact. Let us know in the comments, would you have taken that doll into your home?
Ready for spine-chilling tales that will haunt your thoughts? Subscribe to Forgotten Storyteller for eerie narrations, unsettling mysteries, and haunting stories you won't forget. Hit the bell icon so you never miss a story, because some stories refuse to stay buried. Join us, if you dare.